You're listening to All Things 3D, where we talk about the world of fabricating, designing, and capturing in the third dimension.
All right, Friday edition episode of All Things 3D. Today is February 13th, 2015. Mike, what are you doing?
I thought I'd bring out my ViewMaster, man. Hey.
Wow, what are you looking at?
I'm looking at my, I don't know. Let me see if I can get at the handle here. The handle stopped working, man. Okay.
All right.
I guess that didn't humor Bryan. Oh well.
We got a special guest. We got a guest crasher here, Bryan Yee. Bryan Yee, why don't you go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. I'm a native Brooklynite, born and raised, and I have a small company that does production and design stuff, and our focus is on virtual reality now. We've been working on several virtual reality therapies for ALS, autism, things like that. So we believe that there are a lot of applications for virtual reality, and we're just really scratching the surface right now.
Awesome, great. Well, great to have you on our Friday special edition Week in Review episode. So, yeah, we'll get right into it on our news items. How about that, Mike?
Actually, let me speak a little bit. Bryan and I have been exchanging emails, I'd say, for the last couple of weeks. He started out as one of my customers for, I think, 4 Eyes, and I don't know, you've gotten a slew of items.
Yes.
So, yeah, I know that he's really into a lot of this stuff, and some of the subjects we're going to be talking about, he's going to provide a lot of input, so I appreciate it. In fact, since we cover VR on such a regular basis, I was hoping, I'm going to put you on the spot, Bryan, and maybe every month you could be our little special guest VR person. So we'll see how this goes.
Well, you convinced me to go on camera. As I told you before, I'm not an on-camera person, so this is actually one of the first times I've ever been in front of a camera. I've worked in television since I was 12 years old in high school here in New York, and then after that I went on to college and ran our college station, worked for NASA as a video teleconferencing technician, did a variety of communication-based things, and I kind of felt that it was important to have an understanding of how everything worked in order to be able to create a more complete experience. And that's kind of what we've been doing here, is doing exhibits and experiences. We've done exhibits for major theme parks. I'm not really allowed to say the name, but down in Orlando, and a variety of other places. I've traveled to Belfast and done science centers and so forth. So with the dawn of fast and easy 3D scanning and 3D printing, it's really going to change the way that we provide services to our clients.
Well, Bryan, you look awesome. I like your glasses there.
Oh, thank you.
The 8-bit glasses. I need to get a pair of those. And
I have a pair in white too. I am actually an eyewear junkie. I have 76 pairs of eyewear. So.
Well, maybe you can wear a different one each show. Cool.
I will.
All right, Chris, take it away with the first news item.
All right. Well, my first item, of course, me being a Lulzbot groupie, or the Taz groupie, Lulzbot for Aleph Objects, announced yesterday the Taz 5. Womp womp womp.
I know. Did you have a tier? I mean, you just bought your Taz 4.
Well, luckily for me, and one of the beautiful things, so here it is, $2,200. And for those of you that haven't seen this thing, this thing's a bad machine. They improved the hot end, I guess. They put a new type of hot end, and the only difference is that. And the bed is PEI instead of a PET tape. So both those upgrades, they, of course, make available. That's what's great about the Taz printer, is when they release a new one, all the source files go out and all the parts go up on the website, and you can upgrade the TAS is super upgradable. So you know, eventually, I mean, I'm obviously, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. But you know, when my TAS 4 nozzle starts giving me issues, then TAS 5, here I come. So yeah.
Okay, so it's not that painful for you then, right? It's not like they
Right.
came up with a completely new style of printer then.
Yeah, and actually, there's not that much difference between the TAS 1 and the TAS 5. You know, they're essentially the same frame, a lot of the same components, but what they've done is they've just incrementally made it better, better, better. You know, I think there is one major difference in the power supply in the TAS 1 compared to the models now, but you can upgrade that pretty easily, and you don't have to buy a whole new printer. You know, the most expensive components I think are, well, obviously a lot of the electronics, which are standard across all of them, and then the linear ball screws and the motors are going to be the most expensive components. But everything else is like pretty cheap and easy to upgrade. So you know, it's not like you have to throw away your printer if a new one comes out. It's everything's super upgradable. That's one of the reasons that I went with the TAS in the first place.
Very, very cool. Well, yeah, and I've seen some of the parts that put out. The construction is really well done. And we just had on last week the what do you call it? The sales manager from or the marketer for the Lozbot talking about the TAS Mini as well as the TAS 4. It was interesting that he didn't mention the TAS 5 for us. Maybe we need to pay them more to come on. Oh well, so let me move right into my next item, and that is dun-da-dun, Mattel's Viewmaster of the Future. Yeah. So, as you could tell when we first opened up the show, I was wearing the older version. Actually, I wasn't even wearing it. That was a 3D model that I put in front of me on the screen, if you didn't realize that. Maybe, maybe not.
Yeah, no, I
The
did.
effects were so stupendous that, no, okay. Well, this is pretty cool looking. Essentially, it looks like, you know, like a lot of the other headsets that are out there. Um, and actually, so Brian, you said you might have some backstory on this little
Well,
item here.
not specific, just in reference to some of the stuff that we're doing. One of my company's biggest clients is Autism Speaks, and so we've been trying to find a way that we can incorporate some of the virtual reality stuff we're doing into treatments for autistic people, and also trying to develop some kind of technology to show just what it's like to be a day in the life of a person who is autistic. And so we were searching kind of for the right products and so forth that would be kind of geared more towards, you know, younger children, because that tends to be the people who need the most help when they're on the autism spectrum. And they have a deal with Google. So initially, when we had been pushing the Rift, I went in there and brought my DK1 Rift about a year ago, and they were very excited about it, but they have a partnership with Google. So this actually really dovetails very nicely, coupled with the Project Tango tablet that I happen to have right here next to me.
Well,
You
we're
guys
going to
can
talk
see.
about that in a little bit, so just hold tight on
Sure.
that.
Okay, well, anyway, coupled with that, we're hoping to be able to develop something that will allow you to scan a room in real time and maybe serve that to something along the lines of this Viewmaster headset.
Yeah, well, if you look at it, if this is it, and this is not just a you know, photorealistic render, it looks fairly well conforming. I mean, I want one now. And notice how they still continue with the iconic what do you want to call it, pull down on the right hand side. I'm assuming that's probably the magnetic transition switch that's now in Google Cardboard, but still to kind of give you that operation, you can pull it down and probably do something very similar to the previous version. It probably, you know, the thing that I'm wondering is, this is like others, you put your phone in it or some type of device, and I don't know what it's made for. Do you have any idea, Brian? Does it tell us in the
No, but I
article?
think that in the picture, I had read some of the
Here's close.
comments under what they said that it looked like an iPhone was in there, which
Okay.
probably wouldn't
Well,
have pleased Google too much.
Yeah, and I'm just wondering, I don't know what the size of the S5 will be, but one of the things that I found in some of the other headsets that I've been working with, the iPhone 6 really works well for this size, and if you go up to the Note 4 like what you've got and that I have, you obviously have to go with a larger headset. So I could see this, or maybe even there's a new version, well, there's the iPhone 5, excuse me, iPhone, let me get this right, iPod Touch 5G, which is the size of the 5S. That might be a nice little smaller unit that's low and inexpensive. That's not necessarily a phone. So that could be an option, or who knows? Maybe Samsung has a similar type product coming out specifically for children, or one of the other companies, or maybe even Google. We don't know what Google's next. They may have the Nexus Kid. Who knows? But yeah, it's probably going to be something smaller that you can fit in there. Hopefully it'll be a nice high resolution screen, because probably, Brian, as you know, screens are important. I've got the DK2. I've also got a Note 4 specifically for its 25 by 60 screen, because it actually performs better. The screen resolution does matter. From a kid's perspective, maybe not. However, I think it's cool. I want one now. Can I go get one? How long is it going to take? Brian, you have any answers to this?
No, not at all, unfortunately.
So I don't know though anything about this, Mike. So is it an actual Oculus competitor, or is it like just a stereo? We don't know.
Well, no,
it's a
if you
cardboard.
remember, gosh, it was what, almost 6, 7 months ago. Remember when I first came on and I had the Hasbro My 3D, which is very similar to this, that you put an iPhone in and you could get an application to show stereo 3D images through in videos. It didn't really sell well, and you could get them on Amazon for like 1/7 of the price now. But I bought one, and if you remember, I retrofitted with a rubber band and put some insulation on the side where the phone goes, and then just rubber banded my Samsung S4 to the front. So go back a few episodes, audience, if you want to take a look at it. So I was way ahead of the curve on this. Not really. They were probably designing this 6 months ago. So like this, it doesn't look like it has a headband, so you literally put it up to your eyes and hold it, like I did 6 to 7 months ago. I know it's a long time, Chris. I know that I'm not that exciting, and I'm already out of your memory.
It is exciting. I'm wondering about this actual Mattel device. Is it just like one of those old school things, or is it like so you're looking at two-dimensional images? I guess you could have video now, because obviously it's a digital.
Well, the DK2, all of them essentially use pair imaging through lenses. So they all have split stereo images, and you can run video, you can run static images, you can run games, anything that can be split into a stereo pair. And then a lot of them will take lens correction and build it into the application. So when you were looking at the DK2, you can do the same thing here. The problem is you don't wear it, you view from it.
Got
so
it.
it's probably
Okay.
for not long term, which probably makes sense, because there has been some concerns that, especially with the Oculus, has identified that if you wear these too long, you can get sick. We don't know what long-term effects are of VR, so I think it's a better idea right now to not keep it strapped on, because who knows? I know that I'd like to live in there. We don't want kids just hanging around drooling. We need to get them out in the fresh air. So maybe it's a good idea that there isn't a ban. You want to weigh in on this, Brian?
Well, I know that there are certain limitations to ages. What the ages that they recommend, because developmentally, your eyesight and your perception is still developing. So I'm sure they've done some sort of research, but it's always a concern. When I brought my DK1 and Gear VR this recent Christmas with all my little cousins, one of my aunts had a concern about my little cousin's actually, who's about 7 years old, playing with it. But the kids have no problem with it whatsoever. They love it.
Yeah. So maybe again, it's just to kind of not necessarily restrict them, but restrain them from wearing this all the time, or they just wanted to keep it retro like they've used it in the past. So all right, next item, Chris.
All right. Next item is pretty cool. I had this sent to me by a good friend of mine this morning. It's about a 19-year-old boy who built a $350 robotic arm, teaches you how to build it free. This actually wasn't revealed this week. It was at CES. He was at CES, but it didn't really make the news until this week. He announced at CES this year, while you were there, Mike, that he would be open sourcing all of the files. So pretty incredible. You'll have to check out the video in the show notes. I don't know. Can you? Here we go. You can see the. So he's basically making a robotic prosthetic hand that's equivalent to an $80,000 robotic hand, and he's done it in his bedroom. Since he was 17 years old. So over the last couple of years, now he's 19, and instead of selling it and patenting the idea or selling the idea, he's just open sourcing it and giving it away for free, which is that is an incredible thing to do.
Yeah, a little backstory. Actually, I'm familiar with this because after all the articles that came out from my end, one of the people, he's from Colorado, reached out to me and said, "Hey, you need to get a hold of this guy." So he may be a guest on our show soon. But it's a very cool story. He's been on a TEDx talking about it. He's now, I think, doing an internship or working at NASA. So yeah, he's a very cool guy. Obviously a very forward thinker and young. So look forward to seeing more from him. They've done a good job of making sure he's in the news a lot. I've noticed that. But I'm glad to hear that he's not trying to profit from it. Obviously, he's got a good career ahead of him in engineering, and this just adds to his portfolio. Bryan, you want to weigh in on this?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's actually great. One of my company's clients is IEEE, as you guys all know, is the standards-based, one of the largest nonprofit, global nonprofit corporations, and we do some sites for them called Try Engineering and TryNano.org. And we've been managing that for them for the last, I guess, 7-8 years almost, maybe even longer. And we did a game that is on the site that's going to be updated hopefully soon, that is Build Your Own Bionic Arm. And so I'm pretty familiar with some of the concepts and the things that he seems to have done here, and I think it's great because part of the game that we built involved you choosing different materials, different servos, actuators, and so forth in order to build brick walls or grab things or reach things or and so forth within the time frame. So I think that is that's remarkable. I built it virtually, and here's somebody who's building it for real and actually making a difference.
Something else that's interesting, you may have seen it at the end of that, he is pretty much using an off-the-shelf product that I saw back in 2009 when I was actually doing interviews at GDC. Which is that headset. It didn't do really well. I don't even think it got off the market from the gaming world, but I'm glad to see that they found a new use for it. And what it does is it fits over your head and measures electrical impulses in certain areas, and you can actually learn how to control those particular areas and provide, as you can see there, motion control. So pretty cool.
Is that the Emotive headset?
I think so. Yep.
Oh, okay. So then I guess I have a little bit more to talk about with that at some point in time.
Okay.
Part of the ALS treatment that I've been working on involves using the Emotive headset. And basically, I'll give you a little backstory. One of my very good friends here in Brooklyn, who I played football with in high school, he was recently diagnosed with ALS. And this guy is possibly one of the strongest and nicest people that you'll ever meet. Big, strapping guy. And it seems as if ALS is one of those things that takes down the big and the strong. I think it has to do with playing football and concussions. It's my belief. But I went and saw him fairly recently after a fundraiser. And what he told me when he heard that I was working on virtual reality was, he said that the body believes what the mind tells it to. And I thought that that was very telling, that he didn't know very much about what virtual reality or what I was doing, but he immediately felt that there was something that could help him with his treatment, because as I believe, anything that is neurodegenerative it's something that there's no drug that you can give anybody. There's no single solution to it. That ultimately the solution lies within, because part of the way that his symptoms came on was from um, exhaustion, tiredness, and he began meditating, and then all of a sudden he had the onset of the symptoms. So part of the program that I've been working on would involve training him to, first we're going to 3D scan him so that he gets an avatar of himself. And then what we've been trying to do is work a way for him to use the emotive headset in order to control his legs, which right now he's having difficulty walking and so forth. So utilizing that in conjunction with a nice 3D scan of his body in a environment that, for instance, is very special to him. He was living in Florida, and when it first came on, he was running on the beach with his dogs. And he tells me that sometimes at night he wakes up dreaming about that, and his feet are moving. His foot is moving. So I think that we have to go out and find these kind of emotional trigger scenes and help him to recreate them, because that's going to be what I believe is part of the process of helping him connect his mind and his body. And
there's actually been a lot of work done, and I want to say Ikebani. Have you heard of him? He's worked with mirroring people who have phantom limb syndrome, who have obviously the obvious. They don't have an actual limb, but yet they still believe they do, and he's been using mirrors to replicate a limb for them in order to condition themselves that they don't have a limb. He's got a couple of books out, and he's fairly well known in using this treatment. So it's interesting what you're saying.
And we had that news there. We've talked about a couple times. They've done research with burn victims, right? Where they take a burn victim and they put a VR headset because the pain that's you can actually mentally help someone with images of cold while they're doing skin grafts and things like that on people. They've found through research that if you kind of induce some sort of cold, imagery in their head, they actually have a lower, a higher threshold for the pain during the skin grafts for burns.
Yeah, I don't remember if we may have talked about it. I know that when we were doing our seminars on gaming, we were talking about VR, and that was one of the items. So you're right on with that. In fact, that is one of my items later on that we can talk a little bit more about, and I appreciate you bringing that back up, because I may, when I go up to Sacramento, talk about that as well. That could be very interesting. All right, I'm going to move on to my item, because Chris alluded he's got to get out of here, so we need to keep snapping through these. So my next item is, I'm going to try and do one medical item out of my news items, and this will be really quick. We talked about what I did and introduced it to the surgeon at UPMC. Well, it looks like, what is it, north of them up in Boston, Children's Hospital, somebody has actually done something very similar, except they've taken it to the next length, 3D printed something, and which is shown here. That looks, it's like that looks like an SLA print, doesn't it, Chris?
Either that, it probably is PolyJet, would be my guess.
Yeah, it could be a poly. Well, who makes it? Does Stratasys make a PolyJet?
Stratasys owns Objet. Yeah, the biggest. They're
okay.
the biggest in the PolyJet company. Yeah, so that's how they get multiple colors. It's an inkjet type process, and it UV cures. There's a UV lamp kind of on one side of the head.
Okay. Well, this is translucent from what I can see, or maybe not. Well, the important thing is that they were able to create a model of the brain, and actually outside of it, he's actually shown here, running through the procedure of how you would remove the tumor that's causing this individual to go through extreme epilepsy events. And so he goes through the whole practice here, and then they talk about how when they actually performed the surgery, he was able to continue to review that model as he was performing the surgery. So kind of hats off. We're moving forward with it. I thought there were some FDA concerns, but maybe they're also a medical research hospital, and there seems to be more efforts. A good article also shows the other side, if maybe, one, is insurance going to cover this in the future? I'm hoping that that'll be the case, because if it reduces the time that you're actually performing surgery and the person recovers quicker because of these procedures, obviously that's easier on the insurance company. So I hope they see some foresight in that. The other is, and somebody brought this up, and I don't necessarily agree with it, that because people were wanting more 3D models, maybe that will create some problems with being exposed too much to CT. But as we've talked with Dr. Cleos, CTs are changing, the amount of radiation is changing. But more to the point, once you get a CT of a particular condition, you can use that CT scan over and over again to create different models. You don't have to keep bringing a child into a CT scanner. So you do one before, you do one after, but normally you do the whole process, so they don't need to be exposed that many times to it. In fact, 3D might help from preventing somebody have to go in multiple times, unless you want to do exposures over a period of time to see if there's growth, in the case of my wife. But as Dr. Cleos alluded to, the technology has improved from the receiving side or the imaging side, and the algorithms to remove noise, so you don't require all the radiation you had before. So, but hats off for these guys, and we'll just move on to the next item unless somebody's got to add to this.
No, that's just amazing. I mean, they're just taking what kind of like, it's very similar, very parallel in a lot of ways to your story with you and your wife, and wow, that is like a whole new level.
Yeah, and again, my inspirations came from a surgeon in Malaysia who did almost identical thing that this guy's doing. So, I can't take credit for that. Hopefully, I've encouraged other hospitals with my efforts to move forward with it, but I think everything's been running in parallel, so I'm not taking any credit. I'm glad that I'm part of it, glad that 3D is being used to help people. So that's the big plus. Okay, do we have any more news items, or are we done?
I think that just about wraps up the news items.
Okay, so
maybe we're going to talk about our projects of the week.
Yep. And I'll run through them really quick. Let me jump right into my. So one of the things I've been working on, I've been working with a guy in LA, and we've created a orthotics application for the iPad, and this is the first screen. So essentially, you put in the vendor or the doctor's office. So you send them a kit. Includes the structure sensor, my lens system, a Yoti mount case, and then they supply the iPad, and away you go. So there'll be, as you can see there, a little scan button, and then they fill in position, and then you literally go through 6 steps to fill out the form, email it, or it goes out in the cloud. He gets the information and creates the orthotic from it. So that's the direction. We're looking at May or June. So he actually showed it at his trade show last week, got a lot of positive. In fact, actually had some big boys wondering what my lens was, so that's kind of interesting. So we'll see where we're going there, but that is one of the items. The other is, let's see, I guess I can go out to the links, is Skanect 1.8. And Bryan, who's also very active in the structure sensor world, he's probably familiar with it. One of the things, and I want to talk about this because it's very important from my let's see, can everybody see that? No, I haven't gone to that. There we go. This, again, is Siobhan. But poor girl, she gets used all the time. Well, this is out at Sketchfab, and one of the things that 1.8 now offers, and I'll just say, alluding to that it won't be just 1.8, and I'll leave that alone. 1.8 offers high-definition color vertexing. And what that means is that depending on the number of polygons or vertices in your mesh, you assign a color to it. And because of conversations and what we've been talking about over the last year, they've come up with some good algorithms to take imaging and try them. In the past, vertex standard images that do vertex coloring has been fairly poor, but it has improved. The good point, or the point to remember, is that the number of vertices that you need in order to create good color is obviously substantially higher than a UV mapping process. So we're looking at ways to get the best of both worlds. And why do I say the best of both worlds? If you don't have mesh detail, then you lose a lot of the detail. Let's see if I can turn that off real quick in here. Viewing mode. Let's go to wireframe. Well, Let's go to, there we go. So, am I doing so? Here we go. So if you look at this model, because it has 500,000 vertices, you show a lot more detail like in the eye area. And with my 4 eyes, you can get up to like 2 million vertices. So you can clearly show something that's more of a sculpture instead of just a blob or just, like cavities where the eyes are, and then you're relying on textures to provide the realism. So one of the things that I've been pushing for is to create the ability to let me go back to shadeless here and turn off that. Is to create both the realism and still have the mesh quality, which is very important if you're going to be 3D printing any of this. With small characters, and I've got a little surprise for you, Chris, at the end of this. For small little type characters, you don't need a lot of mesh quality, but if you're trying to create full-size busts, you can really see the difference. One of the things is you start seeing faces, so unless you go in and smooth those, you'll literally see something that looks like an 8-bit pixelated character. So the more vertices or faces you have, the better quality, or the smoother detail that can be provided. And if you've done any 3D printing, as Chris, as you have, sometimes that's important. You can't just use a smoothing algorithm, which you have in the 3D imaging world. So this is the model on Sketchfab, and it'll be a link in the show notes so you can play with it. Notice I also scanned part of the chair there. I didn't really do any texture modifications. Notice the back of the hair didn't come out quite right. Normally I bring this in the 3D coat, still waiting for my upgrade license so I can do 4K and 8K textures. But this was converted from vertex to a UV map, and then that's what we're showing up here. We found that vertex uploads directly don't present very well. This is what they call shadeless, and then if you actually provide shading, notice the difference. And then if you actually could move the light around, you could actually modify the shading that you see here. So here's what it looks like up on Sketchfab. And this is what, if you would actually, so if you notice, the quality is quite good. The reason that I'm bringing this up, and Bryan just sent me something today, I hope you don't mind that I mention that, Bryan, because I think it's very important. ITSE, who is, I wouldn't say the competitor, they've been working really close with the occipital. They created, and I scanned you, and we're going to look at your little character shortly. They use a different technique where they do the scanning, they create a low 50,000 face polygon model, and then they use UV mapping in order to create a really good resolution. And let's see if I go back in my models here. I probably can't because, yeah, I don't. No, let's see. Well, it's a vertex as well. So I'll just leave it alone. Actually, let's see. I'll go back here. Give me a moment. I'll bring up one of my other Sketchfab models. Okay. So here's a good example of the ITSE's model creation. This is, as we showed the last time, the Verizon girl. Literally went into the Verizon store to test out the iPhone 6 Neodia mount case and said, hey, you want to be scanned? Sure. So notice that the textures are really good. You see a lot of quality. I use a lens in order to provide a little bit more clarity as well as a lighting system. Actually, I didn't use it here. But notice you get the detail of her tattoo on the back. But if you go back to the previous one, we're really close right now with the vertex coloring. So here's the issue. Even though you get great color, one of the things, if you're a professional, let's see, I'll go back to that. If you're a professional and you want to do this as a business, Bryan just got a letter that identified that it will, what is it, $5 per scan, but you have to immediately buy in for $200 or $1,000 initial cost. Is that correct, Bryan?
That's what my understanding is.
Yeah.
And
so I mean,
I was just going to say that it's also really oriented, at least initially their pricing is towards people using their scans to 3D print them, whereas I'm going to use them to rig them in a kind of a virtual reality based variety show.
And you know, I'm doing something in parallel, more for fun, but obviously I have a VR perspective as well, and we can talk later. One of the reasons why that's the case, if you look at all the ITSE's full, what do you want to call it? Full figure. Let's see if I can actually bring up ITSE's here. All their full figure scans, meaning from head to toe, that they have now, notice where all the hands are. Notice none of the hands are on or outside. Let's say normally when you're doing rigging, you either do a T or an A, which means they have to be away from your body. Notice that none of theirs, if you go back and review them yourselves, show the hands away from the body. The reason for it is, and I tested it already, you don't get the definition. With 50,000, or in this case I think there's 200,000, you just don't get the number of polygons necessary to show the hands in any detail. Of course, when you're doing UV mapping, they're going to look great. But if you look at the actual, and let's go back and make it green. If you look at the faces, notice that the number of faces just aren't there to actually create any detail in the hand. So what it looked like when I scanned Siobhan is that she had like little octopus arms. There was just like nothing on the end of them. And so you'd have to do that yourself. Or use the Vertis color mapping and use it that way, which I've already done, and it works, in my opinion, a little bit better. So that's probably one of the reasons you can't do rigging with theirs, is you just don't get the resolution. So
well, I'm going to try, and they're actually very interested to see what my results will be, to tell you the truth.
Okay, and I would too.
I mean, so we'll see. But to your point, I did actually do 2 body scans recently just to kind of see, and you're quite right. The hands are probably the least detailed and the least defined part of the overall scan.
Yeah, and like I said, go out to the ITSEs and you'll see that nobody has extended arms. They're all on their body or put in a position where you don't see any of the detail. And that would make sense now that since I've actually done it myself. So, not saying that these two are competing. Occipital just has the best for them. However, if you're not going to be 3D printing as a professional, the product is still free. So you're willing, if you've got a structure sensor, there is no cost to that. However, if you do plan to use this as a business, keep in mind that they will have a cost later on for it. So that is Skanect 1.8. It's out there. I think it's $175, but it really adds much more value than just creating 3D scanning. There's a lot of good tools in there which are not provided in the ITSE's products, so it's good to have that. It does work with the sensor as well as the older ASUS Action and the Kinect, if you still have one of those. Chris, I don't know if you ever played with yours.
Yeah, I still have it, and I'll have to break it out one of these days and play with it. I want to get into more scanning, especially with that Atlas 3D. Once the design and software files are kind of more solidified, I want to break into that and maybe get a little more into scanning. Well,
and you've also got Euphoria coming, so you'll be able to merge cups and everything else with it. On that note, Fuel 3D sent me an email today saying I can order my Fuel 3D now.
Oh.
So I had actually invested little tiny money into it, so I just pay the difference and then I could get one. I don't know if I'm going to do that. I don't really have the funds for it, but it's nice to know that I'll be able to order one. I think I may, if I get one, wait till they've actually got some good stitching software. That still seems to be a sore spot with the product. All right, finally to my last item. I don't really have anything to show yet, but I have been in discussion with the directors of the Shriners Burn Center in Sacramento about providing them a full scanning system. And if it's successful, I'm looking at going out to Kickstarter or something like that to fund it so that we can provide these burn centers with a nice little kit. And the reason you'd want to do that is that they have to be fitted for garments, and right now they need to be touched. And we're talking about children's with severe burning. I mean, if you haven't ever gone out and looked at some of the images, it's heartbreaking. And so if we can do anything to minimize it, and I'm glad you brought up the VR, maybe we can get Bryan involved with this. They could be wearing one of these headsets, or actually just the goggles or something, depending if they have facial burns or not, and to in being out in an Arctic scene while they're being scanned, so we could provide them a full opportunity to minimize any of the discomforts that come from it. So I'm really looking forward to making that happen. So that's all I can talk about right now. I guess we're up to the the print whisperer now. So
Yeah, well, a
take it
couple.
away.
I'll tell you about a little project I worked on this week. I ordered up some of these fancy LED headlamps for my KLR motorcycle, and I got them in the mail, and they're supposed to fit right in there, right in my. It doesn't. It's not. They're just an H7 equivalent. They have all kinds of new ones coming out. They're super bright, and they're awesome headlamps, but they didn't fit my KLR. So, you
Mhm.
know, what did I do? Is as usual, I just catted up the little piece that I needed, and sure enough, printed it out, took them to my mechanic, and voila, now they're in my motorcycle, and they're working.
You're the man.
Yeah, so that was my little project of the week, and
So what'd you print them on? You print them on your Fortis 250 or
I
the?
did. Yeah. They're a little. There's a little negative space underneath on each side, so there's not really an easy way to print them. Um, if I didn't do that.
With a single material.
Yeah, with a single material. So I printed them on the Fortis, but yeah. So I'm planning on putting once I test them this weekend out in Death Valley. I'm going to take them on a nice big ride this weekend, and once I am fairly certain that they'll work well, then I'll put them up on Sketchfab and GrabCAD for anybody that wants to download it.
Excellent. That's very cool. Yeah, I actually got some LED to replace my fog lights because it wasn't part of my car. So what I did was I just um, wired them in parallel with my headlights, or actually not my parking lights. Note to oneself: make sure you determine how much current your your particular driver can sustain. It never burnt the fuse, but I had a little smoke coming out of my dash, so that's not a good thing. But I've replaced them with LEDs. They take about 1/10 the power, same amount of lumens, and no problems with anything coming out of my dash anymore. So if you feel like you've got a load on your system, you might want to look at LEDs. They're much more efficient, and their color temperature is much better than when they first came out. So cool. You need to take some pictures with them on when you're out on your trip in the desert. Hopefully you make
Yeah,
it back.
I will. I'll take some with
But
I'll GoPro them.
um, so I'll get into my items. One, you remember we talked about this is updates. Oh, actually, I'll hold off. We've got a couple of products, the VR360 VR, and the reason I want to talk about this is that both Bryan and myself and I are big fans of VR. So I've got a video that I can run in the background. Uh, But what this is, and I saw it some time ago, and they said, well, we're not ready to ship it, but it looks like it's one of these systems that use a parabolic mirror system into a 4K imaging device, and then as you can see there, you can put it in and it streams directly to an iPhone or an Android device. Is that correct, Bryan?
Yes, and no stitching is required.
And no stitching. But it's not a full 360. Notice it's a cylinder, so you don't get a global effect above it. But for most things, it should be pretty cool, especially if you just do surface mapping in a VR world. So I know that you've got some things that you're thinking about using yours for, and maybe
Yeah,
you can kind of chat about that.
I wonder if you could put a GoPro on top of that and hopefully, gather some of that, um, the rest of the globe, if you will, at least for the top
Oh, you
portion
mean
of it.
just put it right above it? Yeah, that sounds like a
Yeah,
neat idea.
right?
Yeah,
Just stick it on there. That's what I'm going to experiment with. But
okay.
part of
Yeah,
the reason why I purchased it was, well, first off, I was looking for a solution that would do it fairly easily. I have about 3 GoPros now, but I didn't really want to have to buy 5 more, especially because they're always changing. I heard rumors there's going to be uh, kind of an S version or what have you of the latest one that might up the 4K resolution capture. And what I've been doing for, I guess, 12 years is I ride my bike around the coast of Brooklyn, and I've been taking um, video. And I started out with a POV.1 point of view camera years and years ago, and ultimately upgraded to GoPros. And I've been just collecting it for years. I don't know what I'm going to do with it, but I think this is going to be a big help in doing that. And there's so many beautiful new things that have come into place in my borough that I'm trying to capture that all now before it kind of changes as time goes on.
So if I understood correctly, not only does it stream out to the phone, isn't there a micro SD card slot so it can record directly to a card on this? Did I understand that correctly?
That is my understanding as well. So I believe you might even be able to broadcast this, like stream it live, which will be
Well, I'm hoping
interesting.
because next Friday, Chris, we're going to be in VR world because that's when I'll have mine, and hopefully I'll be able to stream it as a separate cast in my streaming studio, and we'll do something real fun.
I love
Well,
this
you
guy,
know me,
Mike.
I've always got some weird stuff going on. And
Yeah.
finally, the last time, and I'm just going to show some videos real quick, is the Bondtech. Jasper
Bondtech.
from the Netherlands kind of brought this to my attention. So let's see. Here we go.
Bondtech.
This is a new, well, it's not a new, but one of the things that a lot of people, and they show a good example here, is that normally you have a bearing wheel and then you have the driver on the other side, as you can see here. So what he has done is he goes through an example here. He's taken this to a new level. Can you hear that? And that's what happens, and I have seen it. So you get some wear in your filament on one side. So what he has decided is to, and I've seen somebody else do this, but maybe he's refined it. He has put gears or knurls, I think, on both sides. There you go. So that way you get constant identical pressure on both sides.
That's what my Fortis does.
Well, and I'm wondering if this, and now this guy's from Sweden, and he's actually going to be our guest crasher next week. That could be, being a Stratus type item, I'm wondering how he's getting around patents, or is this one of the ones that have expired? Whatever, his design looks really nice. I think he's using an injected molded casing for it. It looks fairly refined, but we'll find out a lot more next Friday, and plus we'll find out what the weather's like in Sweden. So that'll be kind of cool. So he'll be joining us as our guest crasher next Friday. So that gives you an idea, and I could show more, but I think I'm just going to stop at this point as a teaser for next Friday.
And
so
I'm going to give you a little print whisper trick of the day. And it's not really print related, but it's okay. It's a new system that I've been using. Everybody's pretty familiar with Evernote, I hope. You got Mike. I know you've started using Evernote. Yeah, I'm an avid fan of Evernote. If you haven't used it, it's a great note-taking app. Syncs up across all your devices. It's compatible on almost everything, and so you can have your PC, your Mac, and your iPod and your iPhone all have Evernote. You can make a note on one, and it syncs across all the devices. That's great. But you can take it. What I've started doing is I took the tips of this one guy over here at thesecretweapon.org, and he actually has a productivity system based on the GTD system that David Allen, famous businessman, that writes many books about. GTD stands for Get Things Done. So this person has figured out a way. I think he's one of the people from a brain tonic company that's like a drink that's good for your brain, apparently. He sponsors this. Put these videos up on how to turn Evernote into a GTD application or productivity system. And I've been using it for the last week and a half, and it is just awesome. So if anybody's interested, head on over to thesecretweapon.org and just watch the overview video, and it'll kind of help you get if you're feeling unorganized like I do sometimes, check it out, and it'll help you get organized.
Very cool. I'm going to do that. Yeah. I can't say that I'm the most organized person all the time either.
Well, it can help you.
Yep. So let's see. I'm going to go on to my final items here, and kind of an update. Remember we talked with Protopasta, 2 weeks ago, had them on. I just want to say that I finally printed something with their conductive filament. There you go. This is a carrier for a electrostatic sensitive device from a person down in Santa Barbara. It has about, I measured it at a half-inch point, about 200 ohms, so it is really pretty conductive. The material is excellent. It didn't create any problems. It's, like standard PLA. It's not brittle. It extruded very nicely. Really had no problems. I am very, very pleased with this material. It didn't appear to do any problem. I changed it out with another PLA right after it. It took a little bit to extrude since this is black and I was using white. It took a little bit before it finally removed all the black out of it. But yeah, it worked really well. No clogging, which was a huge issue before. It worked very good. So I'm probably going to be making quite a few more of these soon. So if you're interested in conductive, Protopasta. Their conductive filament is great. And I'll have it in the show notes. And then, dun, 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 remember I said I was going to reprint Mini
No,
White.
you didn't. No,
so
you
I
didn't.
had it printed, and the reason for it is if I use a burnishing technique, and it kind of impaired the sandstone or the material that Shapeways use for their color. So all I did now is I put a layer of the epoxy resin and then the matte spray on top of it to kind of give it more of a plasticized look instead of a porcelain look. So there you go.
It's Rod.
Hi there, everyone. But I've got a new member of the,
Oh no.
the family, and here he comes. There.
What did you do? What did you do?
There we go.
Oh, you were a kook.
I am Chris. Hi there, everyone. But this time I don't talk.
Oh, that's great.
So I now have my two buddies with me.
That's incredible.
However, the only problem with yours is that I didn't use, we did use the lighting system, but for some reason your face on one side's a little shaded. So that's a problem. Yeah, you're Two-Face. Batman Two-Face? Okay, never mind. But
oh, that's too
plus
funny.
your hair was a little darker than what it is, so I kind of put a little blonde highlights in it for you.
Oh, well,
so this is waiting for you. So I know that you're running off. You probably didn't get yours yet. So if you run down and get it, you'll have something for your longtime girlfriend / partner. Because who knows what's going to happen to you in the desert. So she may need a little token of your love.
It is Death Valley after all.
I'll put. There we go. Hello.
Hello.
Let's see,
that's a good-looking model.
So there you go. So this was done, one of the early ITZY's models I think we used, or did we? Was this an ITZY model? No, I can't remember what I think it may have been. Yeah, it was. It was an ITZY model. So it was one of the first models when it first came out that I did, and so we now put it on Shapeways. It did take a little bit of post work on it, but not much. And then, like I said, I had to repaint the hair from Shapeways. But the important thing is, get some of that XTC 3D, which is an epoxy shellac, put that on it, and then spray it with a matte clear finish. And in my opinion, it makes the colors more vibrant. And more importantly, the sandstone is somewhat brittle and sensitive to dropping it. Smaller objects kind of break off very easy. Now, with this on top of it, it strengthens it. So that's it for those. Upcoming events, I don't know what we have coming up. You want to bring up that link for us? But while he's doing that, we have the Autodesk Real 2015 coming the 25th and 27th, and the reason I'm bringing it up, or 25th through 27th, the reason I'm bringing it up is that All Things 3D is going to be up there, and we're going to be interviewing a lot of the people out at the Real 2015 forum, and there's going to be a lot of big players there. Autodesk, Artec's going to be there.
Yeah, so we've got we've got the 3D Printing Next Revolution in Multi-Material Fabricated Parts show in Las Vegas, Nevada, coming up. That's going to be next week, February 17th through the 19th. And we've got, like you were saying, the Real 2015 show, February 25th and 26th. And March 3rd and 4th in Berlin, Germany, we've got an Inside 3D Printing Conference, which those are pretty good. Typically, a lot of the printer companies go to those, and I bet there's some good German print companies at that one. So yeah, those ones you'll have to watch out for.
Okay, well that about wraps it up. Wow. So we'll close it with the ViewMaster. Can't wait to get my hands on one of the newer ones, but until then, I guess I'll just be satisfied with
and thanks so much to our special guest, Bryan, for joining us today. Look forward to hanging out with you again.
I like his cool glasses, too.
Yeah, he's got a cool... And his hat, man. Your hat's cool.
You like this?
Yeah.
My Darth Vader Star Wars.
Very cool, very cool.
I have a Boba
very
Fett,
cool.
too.
Awesome.
Well, Bryan, if this wasn't too... what's the word? Traumatizing for you... And if you'd love to come back, we'd love to have you. Obviously, you've probably got more stuff to talk about. We can fit more time in. Or actually, well, let's even do an interview with you. I think we talked about that and give you about 30 minutes to talk about yourself. You don't have to hear Mr. Bolzer talk over and over and over again.
I don't mind listening to you guys talk. But you know what? Hopefully next month we'll have our STEM systems. If anybody out there is listening at 6 Cents, and we can make that kind of a focal point of whatever the monthly VR discussion will be.
You know, I'll have mine too. Maybe we can just do the whole thing in VR. Hey, we'll have our Point 360, and we'll have our STEM system. We'll have it. Chris, you'll be out of the loop. I don't know how. You'll be the outside observer. Maybe you can be looking in on a little arena, a little VR arena or something.
These guys doing? All right. Well,
take us away.
Thanks again, listeners, for joining us, and we will see you next week on All Things 3D.
Bye.